Weapons is the new film by writer-director Zach Cregger, who previously did the movie Barbarian, which I love. It's on my list of movies that are a 10 out of 10. He said he was inspired by Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia. Magnolia, a movie that is on my list of movies that are 10 out of 10. So to say that I went into Weapons with high expectations would be an understatement, but clearly the fact that we are here would lead you to believe that those expectations had to at least have been met. Now, I know, here on the channel, you're probably now used to me uploading videos from the radio show, which obviously I'm going to continue to do, but I had so many thoughts and feelings coming out of this movie, Weapons, that I thought that we could talk here. I could share them with you. So, Weapons, and this will be full of spoilers, a full breakdown of this movie that I went out to the theaters, saw opening day, not night, day, to make sure that I got to experience this the way I think people should experience this without a ton of background information other than maybe what's in the trailer. So the story of this movie is that one day in this random town at 2:17 in the morning, a whole bunch of kids left their houses and ran into the night, never to be seen again. Now, the coincidence here is that all of these kids were in the same, I think, third grade class. In fact, it was every kid in the class except for one kid. So everybody realizes that there's a coincidence here when one morning the teacher gets to the classroom and there's one student in her class. And all of the missing kids in the town, all came from that one classroom. So obviously with 17 missing kids, the town turns upside down. And of course, the one kid that's in there, he gets questioned. His family gets questioned. They see nothing there. The kid is traumatized, so they kind of leave him alone. But a lot of people have a lot of questions for this teacher. Now, this teacher, Justine, is, in the horror genre. Are you thinking maybe she's going to be like a final girl? Maybe she's going to be our hero of this story. But she's a person that has problems of her own. Clearly, she's already dealing with the fact that regardless of if the police have found anything on her or not, the whole town is mad at her. See, the police can't figure anything out. They can't figure, there's no conceivable reason why this could be happening. So the only scapegoat here is to throw it on poor Justine. And Justine not only has to deal with all of this, but Justine appears to be an alcoholic. Justine has had DUIs in the past. Justine is drinking her feelings away and drinking every single night just to go to sleep. Justine was had interpersonal relationships that were inappropriate with other staff members at the previous school that she was at. So she's an extremely flawed character, not to mention she contributes to the infidelity of a police officer. Not generally the type of person that we root for, but even a flawed person like this, when we see an entire town, it's almost like when you watch somebody get bullied on the internet that's not the best person in the world, but you just see that it's inundating them everywhere. You kind of start to feel for them. Now, it does get complicated because she does start to come across as kind of a narcissist. She does start to come across as somebody with kind of a victim mentality. But that's what I thought was so interesting about her character, that she is a victim of all of this and that there are people blaming her, but at the same time, she is making this thing that is about 17 missing kids about herself. And the fact that we can go so deep into the Justine character when really this movie is not about the Justine character at all is one of the things that I think makes this movie strong. So as we're trying to figure out, and by the way, the movie just starts, right? There's a little kid narrator who doesn't go throughout the whole movie because generally speaking, a whole movie narrator, I feel like, is a bit of a lazy way to get a story across. But when we're just starting, I think it can be okay, especially here, where we don't have to sit through 30 minutes of backstory. We don't have to get to know all the kids. We don't have to see that they're all in the same class. This little girl narrator in the beginning of the movie sets the whole premise up. So scene one, we're in this classroom where there's nobody left. And we're actually the story is being joined about a month after all the kids have disappeared anyway. So it's all sort of what we're dealing with here. But the way the story is told, and this is where I'm assuming the inspiration from Magnolia kicks in is that it's told in like 4 or 5 chapters. And those chapters are actually this same time frame, which is short, through the eyes of different characters. So you see these different perspectives, and through these different perspectives, you as the audience get to see the kind of full story get told. And I think that that's just a great way to do it, because then you don't have to sit there and go through, 2 years and filling stuff out. You get to, it's really, you're looking at a very short period of time. But because you're getting this full picture through the eyes of different people, you end up getting this fuller story. And the movie it's a bit of a slow burn, because the first couple of characters that you're meeting have no idea what's going on, especially Justine. Like, if anything, she just sees herself as a victim of this thing that she really has nothing to do with. And all you really learn is that she actually has nothing to do with this. So you don't really start to get into the meat of the story until you're, a couple characters deep. But by then, I think you've gotten to know the people enough that you're like, okay, something's cooking. And then once it starts happening, because once that one reveal comes, you do go back, but you quickly get to, okay, we know that this is happening, so let's go forward. And I think that, like, you've got a good chunk of exposition, but once you get to the fact of that there's really strange stuff happening, you get there. I also find that the story was not only fragmented in the way it's told, chopped up by all those characters, but Zach did in this movie what I think he also did in Barbarian, which is give you just enough information to satisfy the movie. It doesn't give you enough information to really concretely tell the story of everything going on around the movie. You only get enough information to satisfy the 2 hours of story that you're being told. You get enough that you can take from what's being told to you and kind of shape your own narrative around it. But really, and I like that, because then you end up getting to have conversations, and it's not like it's buried that deep, right? It's right here. Like, this is what's happening, but how did they get there? Why did they get there? Those are the conversations that you can have after you leave this movie. And I think that you had the same experience with Barbarian, when you would go through scenes and you'd get what you need to tell the story of this movie. But realistically, the story of how and why hasn't been dived into with a ton of depth, so you can really kind of unpack and have conversations about what you're seeing. Glattis, for instance, who is the character of this movie. This movie is ultimately a story about Glattis and what Glattis is doing, but you don't even meet Glattis until halfway through the movie. So what you come to find out through all these perspectives is that the one kid, that it wasn't about the teacher, it was about the one kid. And the one kid that was left in that room goes home one day, and he finds out from his parents, he has a very loving family, he finds out from his parents that his mom's aunt is coming to visit to live with them because she's got some kind of terminal sickness. I think we all assume it's cancer or something like that. And the dad doesn't think she's going to survive a month. Now, we had previously met Glattis in the principal's office, and Glattis is a very mysterious character. She's played utterly brilliantly. I mean, I love this Glattis character. Even when she walks into the principal's house and asks for, can I have some water? I'm so thirsty. And she goes, no, I want it in a bowl. And the principal's like, you want water in a bowl? Because it's like how Glattis needs a bowl of water to turn the principal into a weaponized vehicle. She's the parasite, to turn the principal into one of her weapons. She needs a bowl of water. So how does she get the bowl of water? She says she's thirsty and she needs a drink. He gets a glass. She goes, no, I need a bowl. He goes, you need a bowl? And she goes, oh yeah, it's one of my whatever, eccentricities that I don't even justify anymore. And just blows it off. And it made me I want to say, that's a paraphrase, because I don't have the movie in front of me. But it made me want to go, yeah, I want to do that with everything that I do. Just do things how I want and go, nope, one of my many eccentricities that I don't even justify it anymore, but that's how I do things. I'll have water out of a bowl, please. And then, of course, we see her, who had previously seen that the principal had these ribbons in his office. She obviously took one of the ribbons, is wrapping the ribbon, and right in front of him, casting this spell on him that's going to turn him into a weapon that only exists to do exactly what she wants him to do. And you start to get the sense of who she is. Once we get into the kid's perspective, what's his name, Alex? Once we get into Alex's perspective, he's told that she's his mother's aunt. So when we're first introduced to her, it's, I'm Alex's aunt. But then when Alex is introduced to her, the mother says, she's my aunt, which I'm glad that they did that, because when she's introduced as Alex's aunt, I go, this is an old woman. How could she be the sister? But she said Alex's mom is my baby sister. So I'm going, okay, there's something amiss here. But also, she's got like clown makeup on, a bright red wig, like she's nuts. But we find out that this is the woman, and she comes into the house, and we see as she's coming into the house, she doesn't have a ton of luggage, but one of the only things that she travels with is this tree. And the tree looks like it's the tree where she had one of the branches that she had wrapped the principal's ribbon in before she turned him into one of her weapons. And we realize within a day of her being there, before all those kids are disappeared, she's got Alex's parents in like this zombie-like state. They're in some kind of trance where they're barely reactive to anything Alex says or does. And Alex has to accept this. She shows what she can do by making them stab themselves with cutlery and basically says, I can do whatever I want. I can have them kill each other. I can have them eat each other. So you're not going to tell anyone about what's going on here. And Alex says, okay, I don't want my parents to eat each other, so I won't tell anybody what's going on around here. And then he goes back to school, and you realize, right, that Glattis does have this sickness, and she is dying, but she's living off of, it's not just about being weapons. It's about the fact that Glattis is a parasite. She's these spells that she's got these people under are not only spells that allow them to be her weapons, but it's a parasitic relationship where she is somehow living off of their essence, call it their soul, their spirit, their life essence. It's what makes her better. Very quickly, she realizes that the parents aren't going to be enough. So she has Alex get something that each of the kids in his class owns and has him bring them to her. And she casts that spell on all of them, all at the same time, and they all run to the house at 2:17 a.m., and now they're in a trance-like state in the basement of that house where Glattis is living off of all their energy. And Glattis is able to prosper that way because they're not adults. They're kids. First of all, there's 17 of them, and second of all, they're kids. They're full of life. They've got nothing but life ahead of them. When the parents weren't enough to fuel Glattis, I took that as like, well, they're adults, you know, how much life essence is left in them. But these kids, 17 of them, nothing but life in front of them. So Glattis is going to use that to exist. And then you realize that, you know, Glattis is probably not simply Alex's mom's aunt. That not only is Glattis a witch, but Glattis is not like a 72-year-old witch. Glattis has probably been around for a long time. You go back to when she's in the principal's office, and she says that Alex's parents can't come in to visit with the principal because they have a minor case of consumption. And the principal goes, what? Consumption? I mean, that's like an Oregon Trail, you know, when people were traveling in wagons disease. And she's almost like annoyed and embarrassed that he brings this up. And I think that that's because consumption is the historical, that's how they used to say tuberculosis. Originally, and I mean, you know, 150 years ago, tuberculosis was known as consumption, maybe more. And so the fact that, and tuberculosis, by the way, is a ludicrous excuse why somebody would be at home. Nobody has tuberculosis anymore. So it's, and I took it almost like when, your parents say like, oh, did you watch that on a VHS? And you go, I mean, what? It's streaming. Like if my kids went over to my parents' house and said like, oh, I just watched Minecraft. And they're like, oh, did you get a VHS of it? And my kids would be like, what is a VHS? I mean, it's on HBO or what? It's on Max. Like I watched it on I watched it streaming. I watched it online. Or I watched scenes on YouTube or whatever. And then your parent might be like embarrassed because they brought up this thing that is so out of touch. I thought that's what Glattis did when she brought up consumption, because she's even further out of touch, because I believe that Glattis is this witch that has lived for generations and generations and generations and generations. And who knows, maybe when Alex's mom was growing up, maybe Glattis had another member of her family under Glattis's control. And that member of the family introduced Glattis as this long-lost aunt or whatever it was. She somehow pried her way into these people's lives, as I think that she's done for generations and generations and generations, which in and of itself is somewhat parasitic. And when you realize that this is what is happening, you go, oh, this is why, in what Justine's classroom, they were learning about parasites, and it was talking on the board behind her. It was this list and talking about parasites. Even, and I thought this was great, that when Glattis finds her way into the principal's house, the principal and his partner are watching this Nat Geo show about what I thought was like ants, but it was actually about, and you can find the video on YouTube. If you just type in parasitic ants, you can find the Nat Geo special that the principal and his partner were watching. And it's about this fungus and it's a contagious fungus on plants, but if an ant gets hit with spores of this fungus, then the spores actually go into the ant's brain. And the ant no longer is in control of its body at all anymore. It becomes a weapon that this spore uses. And so you realize that this is, and who knows, maybe Zach saw this video on Nat Geo and was like, what if that happened to people? I could make a movie about this. But it's basically saying this thing that really does happen to ants is what is happening to the people in this town and continues to happen. Now it's happening to the principal, then it happens to the junkie, then it happens to the cop. Like, that's what Glattis is doing to the people, but also the way the fungus kind of then not only weaponizes the ant, but uses the ant to create more fungus. Glattis is not only weaponizing the people who are in this spell, but she's using their essence to live herself and when hopefully continue to. And of course, she keeps doing it. Now, the significance of 217, I don't know. I'm no expert. The only thing I could think of was because it was 17 kids and they entered the house at 217. So I go, okay, maybe there's a connection there between the 17 kids and 217. I go, what's the 2? I go, maybe because Glattis did the parents first and there's 2 of them. So it's before anything else, but there ends up being more. But at 217, as far as this movie goes, it was the 2 parents and the 17 kids. So that's where I got 217 from. I don't know. But we also know that clearly Glattis's supernatural abilities go beyond this spell that she has, because, there's the moment where the junkie is running through the forest and he sees Glattis like waving at him through the trees. And who knows if that's a hallucination or if she's really there or if she, is appearing there. But Glattis also shows up in the nightmares of both Justine and Josh Brolin's character, Archer, who I think Josh Brolin is great. Apparently, Pedro Pascal was supposed to play the Archer character, but I'm glad. I mean, Josh Brolin is so good in this. But Glattis pops up in their nightmares, in their dreams. So clearly she has the ability, and it's before either of them have met Glattis. At one point, I think in Justine's dream, you even have Alex, the kid, who Justine knows from class, obviously, showing up with Glattis makeup on before we meet Glattis. So, I guess I could go through the timelines and figure, but I'm pretty sure that it's before any of them know Glattis, and therefore she must be deliberately haunting their dreams, and maybe that's a way to get them to stop talking about what's going on. You know, I don't know. I would imagine it is, because at some point she decides that way too many people know about this right now. There's way too many people asking questions. So they're going to have to leave town. And she's already trying to have Justine killed. You know, Justine is hanging out outside her place, outside the house. So she sneaks into the car, cuts Justine's hair so she can use it to sick the principal on her, do all this stuff. But I think that basically we get to the climax of the movie where they're going to leave town tomorrow. So tonight's the last night. Alex, and who knows, by the way, who knows if Alex was actually going to get to leave town with Glattis, or if Glattis was going to end up, I mean, at some point, I would imagine she would start using his life essence as well to fuel her. But basically, they're in this house now, and they have all 17 kids in the basement, and they have Alex's parents, and now they have Paul the cop, and they have the junkie, and they're all there. By the way, it was weird to me that, like, and like the contention between Paul's wife and Justine after, you know, Paul cheats on his wife with Justine was put on such display, but never really paid off. I think that was, one, to show how flawed Justine is, and two, to make it so that we all kind of realized that, you know, Paul had messed up, the cop had messed up so much in this movie that it was like we were ready to let him go. You know, he probably had a disease from the needles that he'd been punctured with 4 junkie needles over the course of 2 hours. Was probably going to lose his job as a cop, was going to lose his marriage. Justine was not good for him. He had already lost his sobriety, so it's almost like, okay, if he gets shot in the head, he gets shot in the head. And by the way, they also, you know, when the principal is in this zombie state and he gets run over by the car, and his head gets crushed. At first you go, was that just gratuitous for being gratuitous? But then, which is fine, by the way, that's not a criticism. I don't mind gratuity. But then he goes, I'm like a waiter. Gratuity is never a problem. Then, as you're watching the fights between these people in these Glattis states and humans, you realize that really the only way to get them done, like even when she cuts Paul's throat or whatever, he needs to be shot in the head. So the reason you saw the principal getting his head crushed is because you have to learn that that's the only way to stop them, is to blow their brains out through their skulls. So now we get to the climax of this movie. You know, they're leaving soon. Glattis and Alex are. And Justine and Archer are on the same page. They've made up throughout the course of the movie. They're not best friends or anything, but Archer has accepted that Justine is not the problem here, and the two of them have a similar goal in finding those kids. And they get into the house, and they cross the salt line, and now there's a zombie junkie and zombie Paul after both of them. And then Alex crosses the salt line because Glattis is no longer in her room. She's actually downstairs hiding out in the basement just in case the kids get discovered, which is exactly what happens when Josh Brolin Archer is down there. But what Alex, the kid, does is he crosses the salt line. His parents go crazy after him. We get a great nod to The Shining when Alex's mom busts her head through the door trying to get Alex. But we watch this kid sort of watch and be partners, I mean, not by his choice, but because it was the position that he was in with Glattis this whole movie. So now he knows how to do everything. So he runs into that bathroom. That's where he can get the water in the bowl, grabs some strands of hair off of Glattis's wig, and a branch off of her tree. And he starts going to work. He knows how to do the spells now. He knows how to do the work. He puts her hair on the thing, snaps the deal. And then all of a sudden, all those kids, and you hear, I mean, it's really, you can see, this is where Zach Cregger, coming from the world of comedy and being on, you know, the Whitest Kids You Know sketch show, this is where you realize his sense of comedic timing is still on point. Because the moment where you hear that noise, that ding, and Glattis goes, oh no. Because she knows, like, she's cooked. There's no sort of semblance of, no, I've got these delusions of grandeur. You'll never stop me. You'll never. She just goes, oh no. And like everything, like everything she's been doing, her whole plan, none of it matters anymore. Now she's in absolute survival mode. And she starts running, and these kids start running after her. And now it's morning time, and she's going through houses, and the kids are smashing through walls. It is a very comedic scene. And the families are going, what is this? What's going on in my kitchen? And all these 17 kids that have been missing are running through house after house, smashing through walls, breaking down doors, and they finally catch Glattis, and I mean destroy her, tear her apart with their hands, limb by limb. I mean, absolutely a brutal, satisfying, deserved death for Glattis the witch. And that is when it's not when the spell is cast that the parents leave poor little Alex alone. It's once Glattis is dead, because those kids tore her apart, and we see the head included goes for the jaw, goes for the face, the whole thing. I mean, it is rough goings for Glattis, who had a fairly long life, so you can't feel too bad about it. And the kids survive, and you know what? Everybody's trance is broken, right? But you don't get like, and everybody lived happily ever after. Because once the trances are broken, you realize like keeping people in a vegetative state for what was over a month, you know, because we didn't start this movie until a month after the kids disappeared. So you've got to believe those kids have been in a vegetative state for 5-6 weeks. The parents have been in a vegetative state for 5-6 weeks. And the narrator tells us basically, who earlier told us they never came home again because they never were the same, I suppose, that Alex lives with relatives that are actually trustworthy now, and that the parents have somebody else feeding them soup is the line. So you can only assume that they're in some hospital still in a completely vegetative state because so much of their essence has been drawn from them that you can't just recover. And that this is now, I think she said 2 years is how long it's been passed. So 2 years later, the parents haven't recovered at all. And she said some of the kids have even started to speak. So even the children are only, some of them might be sort of starting to come out of it. So you do feel like there's at least hope that maybe these kids will come out of the trance. I thought it was so great. I enjoyed myself so much. I'm obsessed with this Glattis character. I think there's going to be a lot of Glattises for Halloween this year. I think that I think it's just really a well done movie. I love the cameo from Justin Long. Anybody that was there as a Barbarian fan sees, and Justin Long is in like 2 scenes and that's it. But it was enough. There have been people looking for connective tissue between this movie and Barbarian. I don't think that there is any, but that's not to say that maybe that same sort of witchcraft that Glattis was a part of, maybe the villains in Barbarian were also part of. It's all possible. And also, you know, this Glattis character has the potential for, I mean, many, many prequels. There's so much that you can do with this Glattis character, even though we've seen her die, because so much is unanswered and so much we're assuming, there's still a lot of room to grow here. You know, I think that it's great storytelling. It is a slow burn, but it's a good pacing of details that are revealed through all the perspectives. The movie absolutely lived up to my great and high expectations. Like I said, Barbarian and Magnolia are both on my list of movies that are a full 10 out of 10. Is this movie on my list of movies that are a 10 out of 10? I can't say for sure that it's on my list of movies that are a 10 out of 10. It may get there. I still have to sit with it longer, but what I can tell you is that I left going, man, that was awesome. And then I kept thinking about it. I thought about it all day yesterday. And I thought I woke up thinking about it. And I've been thinking about it today enough that I wanted to share my thoughts with you. So that tells you that as this movie sits with me, and maybe I watch it again, because Barbarian I wasn't sure about. You know, Barbarian is so atypical of horror that and the way the story's told, that I said, I loved that, but I don't know where it lands. And I mean, I've watched that movie so many times now that it wasn't until later on. And Magnolia the same way. First viewing, I didn't know it was a 10 out of 10 movie. So I'll give you an update. You keep listening. It remains to be seen whether or not this is going to be a 10 out of 10 movie. It's not a shock to me that Hollywood was in a bidding war. He wrote this script, did Zach Cregger, on his own. A bidding war started. Jordan Peele's company wanted it. Apparently, they say that Jordan Peele fired his managers because they weren't able to get this script for his production company, I suppose. But I get it. I get why everybody wants it. I've heard that he's doing the Resident Evil remake next. And okay, I'm fine with it. But man, I love the way this guy, Zach Cregger, tells original stories. I love what he comes up with. I love the way he shares the stories with us. I love the discussions that they provoke. If you saw this movie and you have thoughts, leave them in the comments. I will be reading all of them. I'm anxious to hear what you guys thought and what you guys made of so much of what was in this movie. Who knows? Maybe I get to the theater again. I've missed so many movies already this summer, but I'm already anxious to see this movie again, to break it down further. I'm glad I could do this with you. We'll talk again soon. Subscribe to the channel. Leave comments. We're going to talk about this movie on the radio show too. So maybe there'll be another video about this movie. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this one.